Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Knife Chats with Tobias. I'm betting a few of you out there know who Paul Harrell is. He has that wonderful YouTube site where he's talking about guns all the time, and you're always hearing him at the beginning of a video saying, "We're out here on a range, so I apologize, you're going to hear an occasional gunshot or something in the background." Well, that's kind of like what's happening here, except we're down here in the basement and you're going to hear an air conditioning running because it's really hot outside. So with that said, let's get a move on. So let me finish the saga of the Rhino Toe. The last one was me talking about disappointment and the knife and the pattern and so on and so forth. This time I'm going to be talking about the replacement that I got and why I still wanted to get the knife, even though I thought there were some definite flaws in the design of the knife. And one of the reasons I wanted it is simply because, well, I collect sunfish and elephant toes, and I really like the pattern. And I got to tell you, the thing really does look neat. Yeah. Is it the most practical design for an elephant toenail? No. But can you work around the impracticalities of the knife? Yeah, you can. So really my problem with it to begin with was there were some flaws in it. And I'm looking here, looks like there's a little blemish on the bolster there, but that's going to polish out. I'm not too concerned about it. And if you look here, you notice you can, I guess you could say there's a gap right there, but that is that's really minuscule. I don't really know if that is a gap or if that's coloration and the black lines running through the micarta. It's hard to tell. I'm going to give that one a pass. I definitely would not have paid much attention to it if it was the first knife I got. And that's one of the things that happens when you get the first knife and it's bad and you send it back. You're looking extra hard at the next one for every minor little flaw. And so is that a big flaw? I don't think so. I would not be throwing a case knife back for that. I would not send a case knife back for that. I would not send a Great Eastern knife back for that. So I'm not going to send a Rough Rider Reserve back for that. I also don't see any similar gaps up in the front here along the edges here. I don't see any gapping there either. So the most would be a very, very minor gap, if at all, right there. And you're looking at something that is highly magnified to find that, and I don't know if that is even a gap. I can't catch my nail on it or anything. Transitions from bolsters to the micarta liners is what I would expect with a man-made material. It's nice and smooth. This is stuff you can sand down and get it flush, so there should be no pins extruded or anything like that, simply because this is a man-made material. You polish it all down and it should be all smooth. Nothing should be standing up. So all of that is really good. Is the blade heavy to open? Yes. Now for the people who are complaining about that, that is basically something that goes along with rhino toes and elephant toenails and sunfish and so on and so forth. They often will have a very strong pull on the blades. Both blades often. The back blade doesn't have as much of a pull on it. I was expecting the back blade to have a little bit more pull. I am disappointed that the back blade is as short as it can be, and I think one of the reasons this blade is so short is because of the insistence of the swedge here. I think they really need to start thinking twice about putting a swedge on every blade. Not every blade in a knife needs to have a swedge, and in some cases the swedge is counterproductive. I'll talk about that in another video. But if they did not have the swedge there, they could have had a nail nick further up here. This blade could have gone lower and it could have been longer. And that's really, I see what they were trying to do here. They wanted to keep this blade lower than the front blade. But imagine if they would have just followed this along the line of that blade, this blade here, the front blade. If they had followed this blade along there and dropped it in, they could have put a nail nick up here if they had not put a swedge on this blade. As it is, this blade is still too short. And this is the blade that I'm more worried about using than the big Wharncliffe blade. Yeah, I'm thinking if I'm going to be cutting anything on that, it's going to be holding this knife something like this. So I'm going to have to rethink how I want to hold this knife when I'm using that. So this will probably be used for back cutting and also for box cutting, cutting tape and stuff. So I don't have to worry about having my hand up here. I don't think I would be using any heavy cutting with this blade. I'm supposing if you were holding this knife like so and cutting back on a rope, you know, cutting paracord like so, that would work really well. And you shouldn't have any issue with getting your finger in the way. Basically, you're using the knife to keep your hand away from the blade. And I guess that's what you would have to do. So you're going to have to rethink how you're holding this knife and how you're cutting with it. Hold on, let me get a piece of paracord and show you what I mean. Okay, take two on this. The first time I tried this, I went way too far up and I caught the paracord on the little sharpening coil down here, and all it did was get snagged in there and wouldn't cut. So I got to get it up on the blade and then it'll cut. Should probably try and do that without resting my arms on the table. So you can see it does cut all right. Not the sharpest blade going, but especially when you compare it to the Wharncliffe blade. The Wharncliffe blade is a much sharper blade on here, but I think it'll work all right. The key is you don't want to choke up on this knife. I would not feel comfortable choking up like so on it. So I'm going to want to grab the knife further back. So I think part of that is just learning the pattern, I guess, learning how you want to hold this knife and how you want to cut with it. Something that I guess you do that with a lot of knives, so maybe I was being a little harsh on it, but at the same time, the idea that your hand could slip and go right into the blade is problematic as far as I'm concerned. You're going to want to try and grab the knife, and like for me, I'm going to like grab it way back here so my hand is away from the blade. It's a short blade anyway. And the thing with it, and a lot of people have mentioned this, because of the way this blade is, you're only going to be able to sharpen it out to about there simply because of this. See, that part of the blade, if you once you start trying to sharpen it, you're going to be hitting the bolster with your sharpener. The bolster will get in the way, especially on the far side here, because that's where your stone's going to go. So this portion of the blade here really did not need to be there. It did not need to be a sharpened edge on the blade. And what they could have done is put a little bit of a kick there and had that blade come out at a little bit of an angle. They could have still had a bit of a straight edge there, but it could have been coming at a little bit of an angle. I don't know. In any case, the good news is it is a sharp blade, very sharp. I was actually had a dryer sheet and it was just kind of fluttering, and I was just hacking at a dryer sheet, no problem, just catching it in midair and cutting it. So it'll cut through paper, it'll cut through all sorts of stuff. But what I'm going to want to do is pull back on the handle like so, and cutting and chopping and stuff, and feel my finger up against that blade there. And I think that will give me a little bit more confidence in using the knife if I back up onto it. At least that's what I'm thinking. I think part of the reason this blade is so short, though, is because of how far in they went with that. Notice that? I mean, look at how far back the blade is on that compared to a regular elephant toenail. And I don't understand why they did that on a handle that's already an 1/8 inch shorter than a regular elephant toenail. They did not need to go that far back. And once again, they've got really great blade alignment going on there. See how terrific that is? How straight those blades are, and how you don't have any rub. They're not really, the centering is just terrific. And because of that, they really did not need to put in that center liner or the center spacer. And that makes the knife a lot wider than it needed to be, makes it a lot heavier than it needed to be. You got big heavy blades on there to begin with, which is good. I mean, it's supposed to be a work knife, but it really ditch the spacer on that thing, lose a little bit of weight, bring it in a little bit closer, and you got a much better knife. A knife closer to a typical elephant toenail. Notice this one, it does have the blade showing over there, and they don't really care. And this one I feel more comfortable holding, using, and everything else. But I did find myself that I do the same thing on this one. I tend to grab the back by the blade when I'm doing this, so I usually don't get up there. I feel more comfortable doing it on this knife than I did on that one. But also, even on this one, I usually go back to the back blade or to the pin blade and cut. And I think that's probably something that a lot of people do with these knives. So maybe it's not as big of a deal. It definitely adds to a terrific line to the knife. I would give them that much. But I wonder really if the, as cool as it looks, maybe the Wharncliffe is not the blade for an elephant toenail handle. But still, it is cool looking, and I think that is the reason I went ahead and picked it up, despite the flaws that I was talking about in it. And it's because it's an elephant toenail with a Wharncliffe blade, and you just won't see it anywhere else. This is the only place it was ever done. Is it perfect? No, it's not. I mean, function-wise, it is a bit of a flaw to put a Wharncliffe blade into an elephant toenail frame. Could they have done more with this back blade? Absolutely, and I wish they would. As a matter of fact, this is where they should have considered replacing this little stubby pen blade with the cap lifter screwdriver that you find on the Trixie and Milo Sunfish. I think this would have been a much wiser choice on this knife. As long as you're mixing things up, go with this. And I hope actually that they do end up coming out with a elephant toenail with this on there. I really would like to see this on more knives. Yeah, okay, it wasn't SMKW's imagination that brought up this idea, but it's a really cool idea to put a cap lifter screwdriver on there. You could maybe make it a longer cap lifter screwdriver, something like that, on the elephant toenail, and I think it would look nicer on the sleeve board frame that you have here than it actually does on the Sunfish. And trust me, I really like what Trixie and Milo did with the Sunfish. This is one of my favorites, and I think it would have really been a cool idea to have it on the Rough Rider Reserve knife. I think that would have made it a little better. Either that, or get rid of that swedge, extend that blade out, and have it make it to the end of the line there. Give it a nice longer pen blade. or almost like a second spear blade or second drop point blade on the other side, so that you would have your Wharncliffe blade on one side and a drop point on the other side. That would be a nice combination too, if you don't go with a cap lifter screwdriver. But in any case, I do still think that they got a little carried away with the design and didn't consider the function of the knife as much as they should have, which means that there will be a little bit of a learning curve for some people on using the knife, especially if you're familiar with sunfish knives and elephant toenails already. While I'm at it, one other option that they could have done is gone with the sunfish Whittler knives that are out there, because this would have been nice if they would have gone with an even longer frame. Notice this is also a sleeve board. See that? That is definitely a sleeve board. And this frame is long enough that you could have put a nice long Wharncliffe blade on there and have it drop in between these two blades over here. So, you know, so you'd have a nice fat pin blade over there. That is definitely still usable. And you got a nice long coping blade over here that is also still very usable on a nice teardrop frame, or sleeve board frame rather. And imagine that being your Wharncliffe blade. It'd probably stick up about that high, but that would be okay. In any case, there's my final thoughts on the Rough Rider Rhino Toe. I am much happier with this one. I think the denim micarta looks a whole lot cleaner than the other one did. The finish is much better. The build quality is definitely much better than the last one I had. Yeah, there's a few little nicks and scratches there, but those will definitely polish out. And also, you got to remember, you're seeing them quite magnified. Most of the things that you can see in here, you cannot see the flaws with the naked eye. You really need to look at it under magnification. In any case, there's my final look at my Rough Rider Rhino Toe. It is the last of the Rhino Toe, or last of the Rough Rider Reserve knives that I will be picking up in the first run. So I've got this one, and so my other two are the Swell Center Whittler with the big old spear blade, a relatively long pen blade, and a nice little coping blade. This is a very traditional pattern from back around the 1920s or 30s. They really did nothing really with this one. They did not make any major changes with it. And then we have the bar back, which was, I guess, the funky monkey of the group. Well, you've already heard me complain about this one enough, but you notice I kept it. I could have always sent this one back too, but it's I collect oddball knives, and I think that's why I kept the bar back, and I guess that's also why I'm keeping this one. It's a little bit of an oddball. I think it's a little more functional than the bar back, but at least the bar back has that forward finger choil. Not much of a usable blade, but really, if it would have just had one blade or the other, this thing would have just been terrific. I wish they would have just left this with one blade and got rid of the pin blade. Then I would have said, yeah, this is a keeper for sure. As it is, it's just a little bit of an oddball. But today, we're talking Rhino Toe, and I guess now you understand why I kept it. I collect sunfish, and as sunfish goes, or sunfish or elephant toenails, whichever way you want to call them, it's an oddball. You don't see it every day. I've never seen one with a Wharncliffe blade. I also kind of now know why you don't put a Wharncliffe blade on an elephant toenail, but still, it's a pretty cool knife to have in the collection. let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with Tobias. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.